Welcome to On Second Thought. I'm John Price, and I'm here with our pastor, Jay Hackett, where every week we take a deeper dive into life at Peachtree Corners Baptist Church. Whether we're talking about the latest sermon, upcoming events, or just whatever's on Jay's mind, this is your insider look at our church, our staff, and what makes PCBC your church on the corner. So join our conversation as we help you find community, purpose, and growth. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to Second Thought. It is Monday morning when we're filming.
Yes.
And the 28th
of April, man. We're almost to May.
Yeah, this week.
It's gonna be May.
So
sorry.
I didn't recognize that one. And
no, Justin Timberlake? You don't know every meme that comes out?
I don't.
Oh.
I don't. I'm
sorry. Yeah. John, we got to introduce you to culture at some point. I think that would be a good thing to do, man. Absolutely.
I know all kinds of culture as long as it's the 80s and 90s.
The best.
That's
culture.
Why
the
go any
best
further?
Culture. Yes.
Why move on? All right. Well, let's I guess talk about the weekend first.
Yeah. We had a good weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, had a great weekend, but then professionally here at the church,
and Sunday had to come around.
Sunday came around. Yeah. We jokingly talk about the hangover that happens, but we still had over 400 in worship with us yesterday, which I thought was fantastic, and just had a wonderful time of worship. We still have a few people complaining with the sound system, and I said, listen, if you understood how many things that Todd and the guys have to do to compensate for how messed up our system is right now.
It's mainly Todd complaining.
But we hopefully will get that
soon,
this next month, man. And once we do that,
soon.
The clarity is going to be phenomenal. Again, when we had the system that we used, we had more of our senior adults come up and say, that was the clearest it's ever been.
Yeah.
And they were like, that was the best service I've ever been a part of. So I'm really looking forward to getting that system in this month of May. And, and then just people being able to experience worship on a different level.
But, well, we had the new chairs in there.
New chairs were in the room.
Yeah.
Yes. Had a couple of people said that they struggled falling asleep. And so easy. Because they were still a little firm, but they asked if they could come in through the week and, kind of fit the chair, I guess, a little bit more to themselves. And I told them they could, but then we would probably have somebody else come and sit in that seat, because Good Baptist Church, everybody tries to sit in the same place.
Yeah.
But,
I kind of jokingly said we should hand out Sharpies that day to let people write their names in the chairs. But no, it's funny when we record this on a Monday morning and we kind of talk about, well, here's what's going to happen next week. It doesn't always happen that way. And I know that when we were talking about I was going to be preaching, well, then I don't know if it was that day or the next day, we had the flooding.
With the flood,
and so that all got scrapped, and we kind of did a different route. And then last week when we were recording, Todd told us, hey, he just got the message that chairs were on their way that morning, which we weren't expecting. So last week was a flurry in moving chairs. Monday, moving all the chairs into the worship. Tuesday, taking the ones that we had moved out, putting them into life groups. Wednesday, trying to figure out and organize the ones that had been in the life group. So Tom said that we had moved in one form or fashion about 3,500 chairs with first Monday with the staff, Tuesday with volunteers, and Wednesday with even fewer volunteers.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. And it looks so good. I mean, it really does. Special thanks to all those who came out and helped us.
Yes.
We could not have done it without you. But, every one of those chairs have been blessed and touched at some point by someone on this staff. A few of them may have been cursed, but, there's forgiveness. So we're okay with that. But we've moved a lot of chairs. I don't want to see another chair, to be honest with you, after last week.
We're still trying to figure the right number of chairs in there to where, and I felt like it was very comfortable when I came in. I do the welcome desk, and sometimes I don't get in there until after worship. And
Correct.
I sat in kind of that second area on the front row of that, and it felt wide open to me.
Mm-hmm.
It was very comfortable.
Yeah, I think it's good. The setup
Yeah.
Looks great.
Yeah.
And it feels great in the room. Yeah, it was fun. When I got to preach, I saw you and I saw April and I thought, trouble's at home maybe because John's no longer sitting with his wife.
She got in there and we normally sit in the front and I don't want to, in front of the cameras be a distraction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
No, it's a great feel. I think we have about 800 chairs that are in the room right now.
Yeah.
And so the challenge, let's throw a challenge out early today. The challenge is let's fill those 800 chairs that are in the worship center and,
Yes.
And continue to grow that, see that happen. And so very excited to just to see how God's at work and moving in the life of our church right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And we know that you tune in, you watch this podcast because you want to hear all about chairs. But,
yes. All double digit of our followers are into the chairs. I mean, I think that's, they told me you don't talk enough about the chairs. Right. And so, we need to hear more of that.
Well, how about maybe a little something more substantial? Great sermon yesterday. Is there anything you didn't cover that you want to?
It's that question that all of us have, right? What now? What do we do now? And, we kind of mentioned a little bit yesterday the fact that we like the mountaintop experiences, but we learn more in the valley. And so it's when we're not having those aha moments at beach camp and Easter and revivals and, just these so close to Jesus moments, the question can come, what now? What am I supposed to be doing? And, the one thing I didn't really talk much about yesterday was under the restoration side of things, but it's that conversation, that dialogue a little bit between Jesus and Peter there in that moment. And I think there's two keys that we're given inside of that passage that we go, well, what am I supposed to be doing? Well, here's the crux of it all, right? Even when we don't know what now, we don't know what's next, we don't know where we're supposed to be, Jesus says, love people, love me, love people, and serve people, right? And so I think those are the two keys of us going, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know where I'm next. Well, how am I treating the people around me? And, am I loving God with all of my heart? So I want to make sure that those two things are happening. And then how do I serve people? How can I serve my neighbor? How can I serve someone that's in a coworker situation? How can I serve within the church, right? I'm looking for my ministry. I'm looking for something. It's like, well, let me get started. We can get in the door at something and a couple of weeks down the road go, kids aren't my thing or this isn't my thing, but it's still, I want to use my gift. I want to do something to serve. And God, until you show me what's next, I'm going to continue to plow forward kind of a mentality.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning something about counseling.
Well, yeah,
when I was mentioning that to you.
Counseling principle, or it's a kind of a tool when you're helping somebody who seems to be stuck and you kind of ask the question, what's next? Mm-hmm. And, what is the next step for you? And they're like, I don't know. To simply ask what seems a ridiculous question is, well, what if you did know? What would be the next step? And for some reason, that helps people get over that initial hurdle of, I don't know. It gives them that, the ridiculous question gives them the freedom to maybe imagine, to look at possibilities and options. But I think, to your point, when we're in transition, when there's which that passage obviously was,
mm-hmm.
Peter had just said his whole world was turned upside down. I'm going fishing, going back to what I know,
yep.
is even when we don't know what's next, we know that there are things that don't stop. Correct. There's still stuff that we do, even in the intermediate. Like you said, we still love people. We still
mm-hmm.
trust God. We and even in the waiting. And to me, we talked about this in life group after your sermon because it tied in with what we were discussing. Just that the picture of the quiet morning,
mm-hmm.
the breakfast on the beach, that Jesus did give them that space to just pause for a minute before the next thing. And I think in that pause, some of it was restoring,
Correct.
Some of it was commissioning.
Mm-hmm.
It allowed Peter that transition to launch him into what was next, which was a huge next.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
So I
flip the
thought that
page
was,
to Acts.
yeah,
You
yeah.
see what all Peter got to do.
Yeah, not that he got everything right
No,
after that,
no.
but he stepped into a new role, and I think that was I thought that was a great message for all of us.
Mm. No, it was definitely a way to kind of wrap up the I Am series and to think about, what is next. And I think it's something we constantly are thinking about, of, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? And it's not I'm not content with where I am, I think there's some of that sometimes we can get so, all right, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? It's like, just relax, enjoy the moment for a second. Let me show you I'm working. I've got to build you. I've got to, work out a few things in your heart before I can use you the way that I want to use you next. But just enjoy the moment with me. Failure's not final. If we have messed up, I think that's probably where most of us get is God can't use me anymore. Well, read the scriptures. God uses messed up, broken people for his kingdom and for his glory. And so that's the thing to me of just remembering that. Now, that doesn't mean we rush out to mess up, right? It's like, hey, I've often said that if I killed one person, that's kind of when Moses' ministry took off, that if I killed one person, then our ministry here would flourish.
That's an interesting takeaway.
It's an interesting takeaway from that passage. It's probably not a correct context.
Might have missed the point.
Might have missed the point on that one, but I've often thought that might be the case. But it's like, no, I'm not looking to mess up, but we do fall from time to time. And as we do, it's so important to be surrounded by people that love us, that'll encourage us, that call us out, but also, hey, God's not done, and it's one of those things that always I'm reminded of was I wasn't qualified when God called me to begin with. So I haven't necessarily been disqualified, right? It's I was never qualified to begin with. And God's like, come on, I got you. I'm going to use you in a powerful way. And so just trust me and continue to go. So, I thought that was a great way to kind of have that filler week, if you will, there in the end of April and really think about what's next before we dive into May. And
no better setup for
setup.
The question is, what's next?
What's next?
Right.
Yes. So our month of May, we're going to be focusing on a series called Lasting Legacy. And, the idea there being is that I think at some point all of us think about our legacy. What will I be known for?
Yeah.
I've often heard it said, it's almost like if you could write your own eulogy,
right?
What would it say? Or what do you want it to say? So many times we think about all of our accomplishments and all these different things, but what do you want it to say? Because you determine that, right? You determine that by how you live your life is to go, hey, I want this to be said of me. When it's over, he made millions. Okay. Guess what? He also left millions because he couldn't take that with him.
Yeah.
But so, and you hear guys talk about, I want to be known as a great husband. I want to be known as a great father. I want to be, known as someone that you can be looked up to. And it's like, okay, well, what are you doing today to make sure that is the legacy that's left? And so that's kind of where we're going to focus, in the month of May. A lot of things that are happening with, Mother's Day and the legacy of mothers.
Right,
I
think when we were looking at because this really launches us into the topic that we're focusing on this year, which is fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's at first when we started seeing where it was going to land on the calendar, we said, okay, we have senior recognition, Mother's Day, Memorial Day. And so even though normally you would put legacy at the end,
correct.
In fact, when we were kind of outlining the year, legacy was at the end, but it tied so much better into the beginning. But I think more than just the way the calendar fell, I think that is an important thing to do is start with the idea of legacy. They say in any project, in any thing you hope to accomplish, start with the end in mind.
Begin with
and
the
so,
end
if this series, we can start with painting a picture of asking those big questions that a lot of times we don't ask until we're near the end.
Correct.
is have I been living in such a way? Kind of our Bible study, our men's Bible study last Friday. We're going through that book. What's the one?
Dialed In.
Dialed In, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on being a good man or the good man, and it used Saving Private Ryan as the opening illustration. And you see the old man at the cemetery, and he's standing in front of the tomb or the grave marker that was the man that led the charge to find him. And his wife comes up and he says, "Tell me I'm a good man. Tell me I've lived a good life." And so, a lot of times we don't think about that towards the end. But during that time, our men's Bible study, we were talking about legacy and that very thing. What is it? What does a good legacy look like?
Correct.
And Brian Mullen came up.
Yeah.
You know, Brian, who passed 2 years ago, I think this weekend, that here's a guy that partnered with his wife in their profession of training monster companies to do presentations. But really, Brian took the background. He did the logistics. He stayed home and booked the flights. And, it was Kelly that was out in front. And, in our culture, if you're, what kind of legacy? But if you look at the people, the lives that Brian touched, the people, there's probably not a week where Brian's name doesn't come up in that Bible study.
Say that. Well, there's not a week in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm not even in that Bible study on Friday mornings.
Yeah.
But, there's not a week in my life in the last 2 years that his name has not come up or his impact has not come up.
The way he loved people, the way he made it about them and not himself.
Correct.
The way I would hope to have half a legacy as Brian. So.
Correct. It's almost like he's become the standard, that everybody else is looking at now, and they're going, okay, what, the old adage, what would Brian do? Of how would you handle some of these things? And it's just, and the reason that I think we could say that is because he was a reflection of Christ. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, man, it's like I've seen what this looks like,
what it could look like.
What it could look like.
Yeah.
I just think how many times I felt God nudging me, hey, send a text, make a phone call, and I haven't done it.
Right.
You blow it off. I'll do it later, or I'll do something else. I just feel like Brian never did that, right? It was like the moment he got the nudge, he was doing it, or he's at my house and he's giving me something, or hey, just want to stop by and say hey, and just such an encouragement. Last night we were in the elder meeting and Paul Lundblad led our Devo and he did it on encouragement. And the whole time he was talking, I was just like, oh, that was Brian. That was this, or okay, how am I that kind of an encourager? And what am I doing to encourage those people around me? Because, if I'm loving people and serving people, I am in the center of what God is calling me to do. Yeah. And so how do I continue to stay there? So just that legacy, I think, is phenomenal. And so, we're going to see it throughout the month of May, and it's something that we don't wait till the fourth quarter of our life to start thinking about. I don't care if you're in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. I'm, kind of going into my third quarter, starting in May and be 50 years old. And, hopefully that's a sweet spot. That's kind of what I've been looking forward to and saying, okay, my 50s are going to be a sweet spot. And that's something I'm really excited about. But, what is the legacy that I'm leaving with the church, with my family, with this community? What are the different things that are happening? And so, I think it's natural that the older you get, the more you think about, well, how will I be remembered? What is the impact that people are going to have? And at the end of the day, you just say, I hope they, you can know me and go to hell. You can't know Jesus and go to hell. So I'm like, I always want to make a big deal of him. Yeah. How do I impact others with Christ? Because that's the only thing that'll really transform their life. So
it's kind of like when you do a series on marriage and you have young people, singles, high school kids. Well, this doesn't apply to me. Well, no, it actually does. You don't prepare. You don't go into marriage without thinking about it, knowing what is God's plan for it, that kind of stuff. Correct. So it's part of legacy is preparing for what does it mean? What does it look like? Mm-hmm. How will I know what steps get me there? And so, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I really am. It's going to be a great series. And like you said, launches us, more into the fruit of where we are and what's going on and how is that impacting our lives as well as others, and then kicks us off into the summer, which is going to be a lot of fun. We'll have all of us preaching throughout the summer and just kind of seeing how God works and moves, and so cool. I mean, it's such a good time right now, I think, to be a part of Peachtree Corners.
Yeah.
And, I tell people all the time, I'm like, our staff is the best staff that I feel like we've ever had. Everybody gets along so well. Everybody's a team player. And so as a pastor, there's been no greater season of my 19 years of being on this staff to where I'm like, man, this is fun. I mean, this really is fun. And then to see God's favor. We had our QBM last night, and
I like those 30-minute
those
QBMs.
30-minute quarterly business meetings, which
no grenades were thrown.
No grenades, no, and everybody says, "What's a QBM?" And I say, usually it's as fun as it sounds, right? That quarterly business meeting that everybody wants to come, and there are some logistical things that get discussed, in those QBMs. But what I've loved is just how in the season of favor that God has given us, it's more of a celebration.
Absolutely.
And we really are celebrating what God has been doing in the life of our church. We even have a new time at the end of our QBMs for the good of the church. Hey, what's God doing? And last night it was fun just to hear the stories, as everybody shared. But, one of the things that I love is we give a financial update, right? And, the cool thing to me is that our giving has just exploded. God's favor has been on us. Not only have we, we've seen our giving increase. We were up at the end of March, 20,000 above, where we were hoping to be at this point. We're 6 months into the year, so we were 20 grand up. And I believe that Bruce made the statement that as of April, we're like 100 up, and so that doesn't mean we stop giving because things are good. It just means, hey, God's doing some stuff. I want to continue to be a part of that. Our mission budget was $160,000. We've taken in 171. And so, 14.
That's going through to October.
That'll go through October, yes. And so we still have months, of giving and seeing things that are happening. And so our total giving percentage right now is at 14% of our budget is given away to missions and seeing other people hear the gospel. And so, just seeing that, I'm like, man, what a church that has a heart and a passion to see these things happen. Debt free. We have money in the bank. God is continuing to bless. We set up with the new changes to the worship center and took in about $300,000 when we asked for $200,000 for that. And it just continues to see the hand of God, the favor of God, reaching visitors and guests like crazy, and just, continuing to be the ministry that God has called us to be. And how do we have impact from this corner? It's just been so cool to me. And so it was great last night to celebrate those things, excited about where we are, excited about how God is going to continue, just moving us forward. So I'm telling you, now is the best time for us to be out talking to our friends, talking to our neighbors, saying, hey, you need to be here, because I'm telling you, God's hand is on this place. We're seeing things like never before, and this is where you need to be. Yeah. And so when I think there's that excitement that drums up, and it overflows, and we're seeing that across the board, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Yeah, well, it's certainly the healthiest staff I've been on, the one where everybody encourages everybody, where everybody jumps in and helps. Monday when those chairs came, we all, nobody was really dressed for it.
Yeah,
but those chairs were not on a Ryder truck with a ramp. They were on a shipping container, no ramp, stacked 14 chairs high. I mean, and everybody, the whole staff were just jumping in there, and so
now, not that we're just patting ourselves on the back. We had 3 hours to unload that truck, and then it was going to start racking up money on us, and 60 minutes. is what it took to unload that truck.
See, there you go. If you're still watching this episode,
yes.
bonus chair information.
Bonus chair.
More information about chairs. So
tell you what,
man,
statistically speaking, the more you talk about chairs, the more people come to Jesus, I think is what it is.
So we have our first listener mail.
Hey.
Kyle was asking, Kyle Slay,
yes,
listen to last week's episode, and he's like, now, how old will I be when I start looking forward to taking naps? Because that, I think we started off talking about our Easter Sunday naps. And,
yes.
And even April was like, boy, you talked a lot about naps. And maybe for people who are not ministers, they don't understand why would that be such a tiring thing for you? Why is naps? But I think it's just, I think it's respect to God. It's part of the Sabbath to take naps. But I told Kyle, I said, when you get around my age, naps are a good thing, especially on Sundays if you can. It's a good thing if you can get it. So,
well, there's not only the physical exhaustion, there's just a mental exhaustion. That kind of goes into every Sunday. And the physical's not, right. We work half a day on a Sunday, so it's not this big physical thing, but mentally it's just a lot. And you're spent, I've never met a pastor who hasn't been spent after a Sunday. And, and
it takes energy to love people.
It does.
It takes energy to. Now, I think you're fueled by meeting people, being in the middle of the crowd and just, saying hey and catching up with folks. Those who might be more introverted, I was like, I will walk into the middle of the foyer and I will make an effort to say, even though, just the crowd, it was like, okay, all right. But no, that Kyle, I hope that answers your question. And to all the others, if you have questions, we'd love to
I've been told if you
them.
struggle to take a nap, just listen to this podcast.
Yes.
And it'll knock you out in,
it's one of the
about 30 minutes.
Right. So. One of the benefits. We listed, what do we want to accomplish with this? Inside information, naps, that kind of thing. So
we'll talk about chairs a lot. I think that's really the
Our
key
chair
to
game
this
is strong this episode. So anything else that you wanted to cover, or we?
No, I think we've we'll just leave it at that.
That's right. Stay tuned next week where we discuss more of the chairs. But no, we hope that you have enjoyed whatever idiocy this was, and hope that you will continue to pray for the staff. Yes. Consider yourself a vital part of PCBC in not just our Sundays with attendance, but as you go throughout the week, in the relationships that you have, in the conversations you have with your family. And just on the note of wanting to expand this, is we do encourage you to share, to tell other folks about it. And we will see you next episode, and we'll see you Sunday, hopefully.
Come on.
God bless. Thank you. Well, that's it for this episode of On Second Thought. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this with a friend. If you have a question or thought, drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to find out more about your church on the corner, check us out at pcbchurch.org. We'll be back next week with more. So until then, have a great week and God bless.